A week into the Israel-Iran conflict, and tensions continue to escalate as the conflict between Iran and Israel continues for the 8th day. In the latest development, Israel Defense Forces have claimed that Iran has launched cluster missiles on the southern Israel, where they blasted off the Soroka hospital and several other areas, including a Microsoft office in Be'er Sheva. Israel has also attacked several areas in Tehran, targeting key military installations. And according to the IDF, the Israeli Air Force had deployed more than 60 fighter jets and downed UAVs launched by Iran, firing over 120 munitions in the operations. The statement released by IDF added that several missile manufacturing industrial sites in Iran's Tehran as well as the SPANT headquarters have been attacked. These sites were built over years and were industrial center of gravity for the Iranian Ministry of Defense. Meanwhile, Australia has suspended operations at its embassy in Tehran, and consular staff are being deployed to neighboring Azerbaijan. However, Australia's ambassador to Iran, Ian McConville, would remain in the region. All right, viewers, now joining me live on the telecast is a very special guest at this point of time. In fact, I welcome Dr. Alvite Ningthoujam, who is a Gulf region expert, joining me live on the telecast to speak with us over the escalating tensions in the Middle East, over the developments that we are tracking from both the nations in a conflict. Well, a bit brief about Dr. Alvite. He is a strategic researcher focusing on India-Middle East relations, Israeli foreign policy and Israel's ties with the Southeast East Asian countries, its military exports, geopolitics of the Middle East and international terrorism. All right, Doctor, thank you very much for joining us live on the telecast. Appreciate your efforts for being with us live. And as we speak, there are of course some more number of casualties that would be reported at each side, as Iran has also retaliated in full force, while barrage of missiles continue to be launched from both the sides. But when we speak at the focus on the developments that have taken place in this week earlier about the G7, how do you view the entire G7 happening, and while the geopolitical tensions continue to be on a rise, and specifically the ramifications that we see coming onto this conflict after G7?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on this show. I really appreciate the reach out to me. We are at a very crucial juncture, particularly when we look at the geopolitics that emanates out of the West Asian region, particularly after this conflict has begun about 8 days ago. When we look at the G7 meeting recently, it also, it's been a challenge for the international community to bring both the warring parties to some sort of a negotiation or to some sort of ceasefire. We have seen that how the President Donald Trump has had to leave the meeting abruptly before the final conclusion of the meeting. That also signals about the importance attached by one of the biggest allies of Israel towards this particular conflict. But then we have seen various reactions coming from different parts of the world, be it Russia or be it UK or be it France, talking about how both the sides should really de-escalate and come to some sort of a diplomacy or dialogue and negotiation. But things are pretty fluid, very uncertain, and it would be foolhardy to make any conclusions about how the international community would react. But looking at the conflict and the trajectory of the conflict, I don't see any improvements in the situation on the ground, particularly between the Iranians and the Israelis. Both sides have used all their military might as of now to target each other, or what we can call as a retaliatory actions from both the parties. So given the scenario right now, I will not be able to make any comments how the international community would react.
Well, it remains to be seen furthermore, as there is also some sort of speculation prevailing after, in the midst of this turmoil, the way US President Donald Trump has reacted. And if we speak about the international community, of course, we can't take our attention back from the fact that there has been a prevailing dilemma over how the US has been reacting over these developments. And even yesterday as well, we have seen the statements coming at this point of time, not deviating from the fact that it remains to be even more confusing, as US President Donald Trump has said that he will take 2 weeks of time, whether he wants to in fact intervene in the military, depending upon the prospect of the nuclear negotiations that are renewed. How do you react to that?
Yes, you rightly mentioned that confusion is the word I would say. If we look at the reports that have surfaced over the last couple of days, there have been very conflicting reportings which are going on right now. Some have reported that in a matter of 24 hours to 48 hours, Donald Trump is going to make a decision about an entry into this conflict. And on the other side, we also have heard from him, or the tweets that we have seen from the White House, saying that it will take few weeks for the U.S. administration to decide on whether it would like to be a part of this conflict. But having said that, if we look at the recent days and how this conflict has started, to my mind, there might have been some sort of I would say miscalculation on the minds of the Israeli Prime Minister, thinking that the U.S. would be very upfront in giving that kind of a direct support to the Israelis in this conflict, but that isn't the case right now. And on the other side, we have the U.S. administration or the Washington giving that little bit of uncertainty about this entire conflict. So on one side, you have the interest of the Americans to ink some sort of a nuclear deal or sign a nuclear deal with the Iranians, and on the other side, the Trump administration, Trump himself talked about the Iranians not able to come to some sort of a negotiation within that 60 days period which he mentioned. So it was to him on the 61st day when the Israelis have started to launch this strike against the Iranians. So to my mind, it's a pretty, again, reiterating what I mentioned just a while back, it's a very fluid situation, but it would be much the interest of the Israeli Prime Minister to have US on board, because that's one of the, I would say, the security guarantees that the Israelis could feel at this moment, because the Iranians are also not de-escalating, and they are not also reducing their strikes against the Israelis. So it's going to be a little bit of a long-drawn affair. Again, anything to be predicted in the Middle East is very difficult. The region is too fluid and too difficult to be predicting any sort of eventuality or outcome. Whatever that I'm saying right now, turn out to be the opposite in the evening or tomorrow morning also. But then the Americans, of course, would want to have some sort of an agreement with the Iranians. They are also looking from their point of view. Even if you look at some of the developments since last day and a half, many of their assets, military assets from the region have been, I think, removed, or they have been scaled down. So they are also mindful of the larger implications or the ramifications of this particular conflict if it hasn't come to an end anytime soon.
Dr. Alvite very rightly said. In fact, I'm able to gather some sense from the statements that you are putting in perspective at this point of time. But what really also remains the big question right now, when we are watching these developments every hour unfolding, more chaos, extensive damage, what really remains to be the end game? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's end game remains to be the big question, as Israel has the aerial superiority and it continues to bomb Iran with an objective to destroy all its nuclear bases.
Yeah, see, the end game again would be very difficult to predict, but what my sense is that, this is something which I have analyzed just a couple of days ago also in one of the channels, that the end game, of course, for the Israelis would be to destroy the Iranian nuclear facilities, which they have been doing since the beginning of the strike, and at the same time the regime change. But if you look at the elimination of various leaders in the last 7 to 8 days period, many of them are the ones who are very, very closely associated with the supreme leader. or the theocratic regime. So that, in a way, gives us a signal that they are very interested in destroying all the affiliations that has got to do with the theocratic regime. And IRGC, of course, is one of the strongest forces that looks into some of the external dynamics of Iran in terms of the military and security and strategy policies. The end game would be, of course, to weaken Iran. We already have seen how the Israelis have been striking against Iranian nuclear facilities, but mostly the military facilities to do with missile stockpiles and those places where the Iranians have stock up their the assets. But to completely dismantle the Iranian nuclear program, that will be a long drawn affair. That will take lots of efforts, manpower, intelligence, and at the same time military capabilities. And that when the Israelis would definitely look forward to getting some sort of a support from the American administration. But the latter aspect, which is the destruction of the Iranian nuclear program, I don't think Israelis will be able to do it on their own. So my sense is that this conflict might, transform into a protracted warfare where, the Iranians also will try to scale down the intensity of their strikes, but not completely halting these strikes against the Israeli cities or any establishments.
One last question before I let you go, and I want this to be answered because this has to be put in perspective, right? You are saying that it could be a protected warfare, and what do we learn from here? What does the Middle East at large and the United States, especially the developments that have happened in the last few weeks, can learn from this, and what this could also mean for the escalations thereafter? Briefly.
See, for me, if I have to look at it from the geopolitics point of view, the order in the Middle East definitely will be changed. I would say that the Israelis, of course, has proved themselves to be one of the strongest powers in the region. The fact that they have been able to strike against Iran without any, say, outright support from any major powers, particularly the US in itself, sends out a signal to the Middle Eastern countries that they are one of the strongest powers to be reckoned with. And of course, this is something which everybody knows about. But the order, the geopolitical order in the Middle East will of course be changed, and Israel will emerge as one of the powers in the region. For the Americans, if you look at the trajectory of the U.S. foreign policy in the last few years, particularly for Donald Trump, he does not believe in conflict. That's what he continues to say. He would to bring some sort of a stability in the region, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why he has been promoting various projects and also various reach outs to the monarchies in the Gulf region. But if we look at the overall dynamics in West Asia, this conflict is not going to end anytime soon. I've always been of the view that no matter what we do in the Middle East, this Iranian-Israeli tension remains one of the most important drivers, apart from the unresolved Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If you look at the recent history of this Iranian-Israeli rivalry, it had begun to this scale. It has reached this scale, particularly after the outbreak of the conflict in October 2023, following Hamas attack on Israel. So you have on one side Israeli-Palestinian unresolved conflict, and at the same time the Israeli-Iranian rivalry will continue to play a very, very important role in determining the future of the Middle East.
Well, all right. In fact, Dr. Altif, thank you very much for being with us. I appreciate your comments and your efforts to put this in context and in perspective in such a detailed manner. Thank you for being with us while we move forward.